I'm Todd Bingham, President of the Utah Manufacturers Association. Welcome to Capitol Hill. We're here at the House of Representatives. In just a minute, I'm going to interview Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson. We're going to talk about priorities he sees as Speaker of the House that need to get done this year that are beneficial to business community and to manufacturers. Stay tuned. Speaker, thanks for being here and allowing us to come in and visit with you. This is our first edition of the year of Inside Manufacturing, and a little show we do where we talk about kind of inside baseball on manufacturing, and appreciate you taking some time. I know you are super busy right now and probably not going to sleep until March, but maybe to start things off just quickly, tell us a little bit about yourself personally. We're a citizen legislature, which means you have a day job and a career. And so tell us a little bit about that before we dive into maybe some policy discussion.
Yeah, well, super quick. I don't think I'm terribly interesting, but lifelong Utahn. Grew up here, grew up in Davis County, lived in Davis County my whole life, and graduated from Weber State with a degree in business. And my career over the last 30 some odd years has been, first part of it was in financial services, but the last 20 plus years has been in real estate development and construction. And kind of a kindred spirit to manufacturing in a lot of ways. And so that's me. We live up in Kaysville now, and life's great.
Yeah.
So,
how long have you been in the legislature now? I was trying to remember that the other day.
This will be lucky 13, my 13th session, and it's been a really great experience. I have loved meeting people up here, doing the work for the state of Utah, and I'll tell you, Todd, I, as speaker, have had the opportunity over the last few years to travel around the country and meet speakers from around our great country. And I am so glad to be Speaker of the House in Utah. And you have no idea how blessed we are here. So it's a great place to be.
Yeah, we'll be rolling out in the next couple of weeks, and I'll bring you a copy personally. Competitiveness Red Book that's done around the state. That we're doing one for Utah, specifically for you as policymakers and as local officials, that ranks some 40 categories for Utah. And I'd echo your statement there. As I travel around the country with my colleagues that run manufacturers associations, every time I talk about a challenge we have, they just tell me to stop talking and tell me that we don't have any problems. And I remind them that while we have been ranked number one in many categories, much because of your guys' thought as a legislature, rainy day funds, the budgeting, transportation, logistics, how you handled the pandemic, many of those things, we still have our challenges.
Sure.
And certainly it is very difficult to become number one. As a state. Utah's done that very well. It also means every other state out there is chomping at our heels and nipping at our heels to get it after us. And so, while you're glad to be speaker here, we still have work to do, and we still got things we want to accomplish.
Sure.
One of the things I wanted to just briefly bring up and thank you for was, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was 2018, it may have been 17, was the removal of sales tax on inputs. And it was before you were speaker, so maybe it was 17.
It was, I took the speakership in 19.
In 19, so it could have been
18.
It could have been 18. I was trying to remember which year that was and failed in my homework assignment to go look at that. But you were paramount in being the champion in helping the manufacturing industry remove those sales tax on the inputs to production and allow manufacturers to only pay sales tax on the finished product. At the time, that was a $60 million tax cut to manufacturers. And I've told you this many times, but I wanted to be able to express it to our members. Thank you for taking the baton and leading the charge on that. That type of policy has been significant in helping our industry continue to be the engine that drives the economy here and to grow rapidly and to do those things. So thank you for your involvement in that.
Well, you're welcome, Todd, and your leadership on that was important. Over the course of my legislative career, there's a lot of bills and things that I've done that I feel good about. But that being involved in sponsoring that bill, it took us more than 1 year.
It took us a couple of years. Yep.
We had to work at it for a while, but it's one of the highlights. And I'll tell you why. there's a lot we can do to create a prosperous business community here, but there's something really important about taking good care of the businesses that chose to build a workforce here, to build their products here, and that want to stay here. And we have to get policy right. Policy and tax policy do drive decisions. And that was an easy one for me to get behind because of how important your industry is too. I mean, there's a lot of industries. We love all the industries in the state. There are some that have a disproportionate impact on Utahns' prosperity and their ability to have a great life here. And you are at the core of that, in my opinion. We've got some industries that are maybe faster and brighter at different times, but the industry you're in is absolutely fundamentally super important to the state.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. It's been a pleasure working on that. As you indicated, it took a couple of years, and that's okay. Sometimes good policy takes a couple of years.
The hard things
take time. So spend just a couple of minutes as we're ready to go into 2023. We're there. When I think 2023, I think the legislature. So we're 2 weeks out, and we've got some challenges, some things we're going to have to tackle. We as an organization will track close to 200 bills up here that impact manufacturers in one way or another. And many of those are issues that you obviously know about, may not be top of the list for you, but give me 3 or 4 things that you believe need to get done this year that would benefit business and your constituency and the citizens of Utah.
Sure. Well, first of all, you're lucky you're only tracking 200. I'm tracking about 1,200. So be grateful for that, Todd.
I am.
But, well, there's, you said earlier that it's hard to get to number one, but it's even harder to stay number one. And it's pretty important to me that we do that. And one of the things that we need to continue to work on is our tax policy. We've already talked about how it affected your industry. But the truth is the legislature's been very responsible and restrained spending over the last few years. And it's created a lot of ongoing revenue that we're going to have this session that we feel pretty good about. I know we're maybe at the cusp of a potential slowdown and a recession, but we've already accounted for that. In fact, I'll just tell you something I haven't told people yet really publicly, but I was at a conference last month and there were lawmakers from all across the country there. Speaker stood up and talked about state's fiscal health, and I went and talked with him after. And as soon as I said, I'm Brad Wilson, I'm the Speaker of the House from Utah. This guy was from Moody's Analytics. He looked at me and he said, Utah is the best state in the country prepared for a downturn. But all that being said, I believe we need to give Utahns a significant and sizable tax cut. It'll keep people here, it will draw people here, it will let them have more of their own money to deal with inflation. And it's an important issue. And so we will have, my expectation is by far the largest tax cut in Utah history this session. Specifically though, to the sector that you're in, and I bring that up because it's going to impact all of your people, your employees, your business owners. But there are some things that we know are impacting Utah businesses, some directly, some indirectly. And let me talk about 2 indirect ones, housing and water. Like, why am I talking about water? Well, some of your folks use water.
Big deal.
But we put record investments into water investment conservation and making sure that we are resilient when it comes to our water future. You will see an investment this session equal to or greater than the $500 million we put towards water last year. And that's going to be important for our state to be able to grow, for businesses to be able to continue to expand, and to have employees that they can grow with. And the same thing with housing. You know, we used to have a competitive advantage as a state to attract workers here because our housing was affordable. We have some of the most expensive housing in the country now. And it's not going to get any better. And so you're going to see a fairly aggressive agenda from the legislature this session around affordable housing and making housing affordable to all Utahns. And fundamentally, and your members will understand this really well, it's a function of supply and demand. We do not have enough supply.
Right.
And the challenge, quite frankly, is local government. Some are really great. Some are standing in the way of getting housing that meets market demands. And so we're going to have to work with our partners at the city level to address this imbalance of supply and demand.
I appreciate you commenting on that because with our board of directors, we actually had this conversation last year about that the rising cost of housing was having an impact on the ability to retain and to acquire new talent. The wages have gone up, and our industry typically is one of the top 2 highest wage average wage in the state, second only to mining. And we've tried to keep up with that as an inflationary measure, but with the housing costs, it's been one of those issues that our employees for those companies are saying they just simply cannot afford housing. And second was the ability for them to get transportation to those works. And so what you guys have done on light rail, what you continue to do on light rail and other areas there and housing couldn't be more supportive of that. We have a very educated workforce, but I mentioned that competitiveness red book, and that is one of the categories that we've dropped over the last number of years significantly, is our cost of housing has jumped very high.
Yeah, in the construction business that I operate, we see it with our employees as well, Todd. And so I'm on the front lines of this too. It's a challenge for employers and their employees to be able to afford housing, and policy makers in the state need to be paying close attention to it, and we are. So
great. You mentioned water.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of our folks very interested in water. In my previous life, spent some time in the ag industry and learned enough about water law to be dangerous. Wouldn't say I'm a water buffalo, maybe more like a water cub, but made some changes the last couple of years to look at the ability to put water to beneficial use by actually allowing it to continue in the system. Do you see more movement on that front to look at the ability to encourage people to conserve water? And historically, the reason I say that is much of Utah's water law has not really been conducive to conserving, because if you didn't put that water to use, you lost it. And so I know you've made some changes there. You see anything big on the front there? Or it's going to take some time and some ingenuity. You've been big behind the Great Salt Lake, and certainly we have extractive folks around there that are very interested in that as well.
Yeah, well, we could spend an hour just on water,
we could.
Todd, but you will see another aggressive agenda on policy and appropriations. We know that you talked about ag. Ag uses the majority of the water in the state.
Typically the bank, right?
Yeah.
They hold the water.
Yeah, that's right. And but they've been amazing partners and are very willing to help solve this problem. And we have a program called Ag Optimization. We've put $75 million into it. The idea is ag can reduce their consumption by about 30%. Well, it's proved to be wildly successful. For every dollar we put in, they put in about $4. And so they're really willing partners. And so you'll see a large investment, I think, from the legislature on that front this year. It is the most impactful and highest return on investment dollars we can spend as a state on water conservation. There are other things we can do, but we all have to be equally yoked in terms of saving the Great Salt Lake. The risk to our economy and our quality of life, our recreation, everything here is tied to that lake, and it's at dangerously low levels. I think we're all starting to understand and appreciate the risk that exists there. But it's going to take a decade of concerted effort, even with wet winters like we're having so far. This is literally just a drop in the bucket. It is. If we had a winter that kept going like this for another 10 years, we would maybe start to solve the Great Salt Lake problem.
No, I agree. I had the opportunity to serve on the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council for about 8 years, and so I appreciate your efforts on that. Our industry appreciates your efforts on that. We are water users and support your efforts to really look at that and move forward. So, don't want to take any more of your time. I want to thank you again for your leadership. Thanks for what you do. Again, as I travel around the country, I'm proud to say that I consider the Speaker of the House here a friend and a colleague, and that when we tackle policy issues, it's how do we continue to keep Utah number one, not how do we try and keep the state from bankrupting itself or those types of issues. So continue doing what you're doing, and wish you a successful session, and look forward to some great policy work that you guys get done this year. Thanks again.
Well, thanks, Todd. It's good to have you up here.
Thank you.